We are still waiting patiently for Bitcoin to finally have a much larger bounce and reclaim significant highs. And while we wait for this to happen, most altcoins, like of course HBAR, are chopping and they are still in a significant downtrend. Currently today, HBAR is trading at about roughly 17.5 cents. It did hit a high of roughly 18 cents. I know that the high was a little bit over 18, but we're just going to round down to 18 cents. And during this time, I still think that, we are being presented with significant opportunities in this space, especially when it comes to some of the strongest altcoins, like, of course, Hedera. And we have to talk about it. We have to address it because there's still a lot going on in this space beyond just typical price action. We are trying to get through this sell-off. It's going to take a little bit of time. Yes, we're going to chop. We're going to consolidate. We're going to have to wait. I know it sucks, but hey, that's the game. That's just the game that we're playing right now. But when it comes back to HBAR, this is our current chart setup. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Most of these altcoin charts, when we are looking at RSI, especially on some of the higher time frame structure, we just hit some of the lowest points on these charts. And I know that we're not talking just about price action. We're talking about the indicators. The indicators are telling us that most of these altcoin charts are oversold. They are getting overcooked. And it's at a time where we are still in a nice, strong uptrend on HBAR. And we are just waiting for something to happen. Now, the key thing to watch for when it comes to HBAR is flipping this blue zone. And at that point, right, we're talking about, 18.5 to like 21.5 cents. But at that point, we will most likely be flipping the uptrend, and we should start to have a retest of the upper trend line before we start to have that much larger breakout. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next week, but we will slowly but surely get back to the point where we have that strong uptrend. And when I say strong uptrend, I'm not talking about the one that we currently are trading on. I'm talking more so about a much larger break to the upside where we are flipping this upper trend line and we're starting to have a clear push to the upside. We still need to break over this blue zone. After that, we start to target some of the previous highs. The main one that I'm really looking at here is ultimately flipping the high wick going back to February and kind of flipping over this midline, if you will, on this chart, which is right around like 20. I'll just round up to like 29 cents, right? So again, we have some work to do on this chart. However, RSI is telling us that, this chart for the most part should be bottomed out. I would be very surprised if we started to have a much larger crash on the HBAR chart down below some of these previous lows. At that point, I would say structure is broken and we should flip bearish on HBAR. But with RSI hitting the levels in which it is hitting, and even back here in October, this is where we also hit close to this RSI. I feel like we are at the point where we could say that this chart should be bottomed out here. Now, the question here is, will we bottom out? Because should and is are two completely different scenarios. And at this moment, the main thing when it comes to HBAR being bottomed is watching Bitcoin. Because again, Bitcoin is having a sell-off yet again today. And we are watching Bitcoin to have a much larger break to the upside because this is the major driver of everything in the space. So while we wait patiently for Bitcoin to do anything other than just, reject some of the previous highs, we really want to see, Bitcoin have that much larger break to the upside, strength to form yet again on this chart. That way we could feel more confident about altcoins like HBAR during this time. So again, main thing to focus on here is if we do start to flip some of the key highs, very good. Pretty big confirmation, in my opinion, of us being bottomed. But right now, main thing to focus on and be very cautious of when it comes to HBAR and a lot of altcoins is just losing some of these previous lows. If we start to see RSI dipping back down into like the red, like for example, going all the way back here into 2022, this is key levels that I would be adding to my HBAR bag at, because when we start to get oversold like that, it's typically a major signal that, hey, we're going to have a much larger bounce. We're going to have a reclaim of some of the previous highs. So if we do start to sell off and if the chart becomes extremely oversold, then that's an opportunity in disguise. And I still feel like most of the space is still trading at or around opportunities where we can add for our long-term bags. But we still need to be very cautious with Bitcoin and also the rest of the space having a sell-off the way that it is. Most people are playing with leverage right now, which also leads to a lot of liquidations, which also impacts the space significantly. But beyond that, talking more so about HBAR, right? Looking at the markets, we are listed on over 161 platforms. We have over 160 plus pairs, and we constantly are seeing more updates around the space where altcoins are getting added to additional exchanges. Like, for example, HBAR getting added to Edge X Exchange. Now, this is not a massive platform. When we're talking about this exchange, they have 27,000 followers. It's not like, hey, Coinbase is listing HBAR or anything like that, which, by the way, yes, Coinbase already did list HBAR, but just using that as an example. But again, we are starting to see more market expansion for some of these great altcoins like HBAR, which is very good to see. And again, it's just good for volume and more, access to HBAR. So very good update here. Also, beyond that, talking more so about the strength of some of these altcoins and why they're still very good opportunities, even when we start to see Bitcoin having a much larger sell-off or maybe even pulling back a little bit, and we start to see the price chart of some of these altcoins, dropping a little bit more as well. The main thing that I'm looking at here is just how the performance of last month was across the board for some of these platforms. And when we are looking at things like this from the Hedera Foundation, we have on Hedera, September was a busy month. Tokenized stocks with Swarm Markets, Stargate Finance launched Wrapped Ethereum, Lloyds Bank and Aberdeen led a UK first and well beyond. And this is a big update. We have network by numbers, 246 plus 30-day active dev accounts, 88% increase around SushiSwap Q3 trading volume, 2 million plus total Thrive project transactions, and then also API relays processed 10 million plus. So again, that's a very interesting one to look at because that means that there's building happening. And I wonder what's going to be happening here in terms of, major growth, major building, and just what happens next, because again, we already know that there's been a lot of great announcements happening around the ecosystem with projects launching on Hedera, projects building on Hedera, and then also integrations as well. So I'm definitely watching this closely, and I'm going to see what happens here with, some of these API relays and what they really are going to lead to. But this is showing us a clear confirmation that there's a lot of dev activity and building happening behind the scenes. Now, we have over here from Hedera Foundation specifically, so we can see a few things that were launched, like for example, the key highlights. Stargate brings Wrapped Ethereum to Hedera DeFi, which we talked about. We talked about SushiSwap as well. Dead Pixels Ghost Club laps the NFT field, UK's first RWA deployment using Hedera, and then also HGraph reps Hedera at Georgetown. So the first one here with Wrapped Ethereum, this is definitely a big one. This is made possible by Stargate Finance's bridge. And when it comes to Wrapped Ethereum coming to some of these platforms, it opens up the door for a lot of things around DeFi use cases, more users coming to the network, just overall great expansion for DeFi itself. Beyond that, the network by numbers, we talked about it, right? Dev activity has been surging. This is because, again, a lot of the recent events, there's been a lot of great hackathons and things like that happening around Hedera. So that could definitely be a big key driver of this, but then also developers want to build on networks that are extremely efficient. And of course, Hedera is one of the best ones out there to build on. Then we also saw SushiSwap posted breakout Q3 numbers. We already know that they've been building out their mobile application, which is definitely a big one. But we have trading volume climbed 88% to 974 million, while total value locked grew 67% to nearly 99 million. Active users increased 23% quarter over quarter as well, reaching almost 10,000. Thrive funded projects generated over 2 million transactions across 6 applications, reaching 152,000 plus users. The ecosystem demonstrated that meaningful adoption is happening at the application layer where users actually live. And then also Lava Network processed 10 million plus monthly API relays. The decentralized RPC infrastructure achieved milestone approval for expanded access, providing developers with reliable, performant connectivity to the network. And again, that's why those API relays are so important, is because it is all based around dev activity. So with 10 million plus hitting the network around Lava Network, that's very interesting to see. it really comes back to the idea of like what's really being built out here, what's happening with all of these, relays, what's going on here. Something big is being built behind closed doors. So very excited about that. And then of course, yes, when we look at some of the other key things, the ecosystem, the community, we've been seeing so much growth happening around the ecosystem with the community engagement as well. These are all of like the key ones if you guys do want to look into those. But then we also have HBAR in the wild. So yes, we did see the first in RWA deployment. Lloyd's Banking Group in Aberdeen used Hedera-based RWAs as collateral for foreign exchange through Archix, signaling institutional finance moving from pilots to production on public blockchain infrastructure. And then also Archix launches pool tokens. This was huge around a lot of those major money market funds, right? This is to support pool tokens through Archix, allowing users to create custom token-based ETFs in the form of a unique digital asset. Then, of course, Swarm Markets is bringing tokenized stocks to Hedera. This is a big one. We've been talking about tokenized stocks and how they've been growing significantly over the last couple months. Then we also have coins.ph listing HBAR and SOS. As I've mentioned, we are starting to see more and more market expansion around Hedera becoming a reality. Even though, HBAR is already listed on so many big platforms, we have over 160 plus pairs. We are still getting added to more exchanges. And then, of course, yes, we did see Robinhood Legend adds HBAR. So this is HBAR support, which introduces HBAR to a new segment of Robinhood users that engage in advanced charting and 24/7 trading. So yeah, listen, we've been seeing so much happening around the Hedera ecosystem. I'm very excited about this. I think that this is great. And again, it goes back to the whole idea of, yeah, during this time where you have the market being extremely volatile, you're starting to see these major wicks across the board for crypto. Everyone's concerned, everyone's worried, they're scared a bit. The biggest thing that I can always say, and the number one thing that I try to stress every single time that we see, a market crash or anything like that is, number one, zoom out. See how things are looking when you zoom out, even when it comes to HBAR. And I know that everyone's going to hate me for doing this, but like when you zoom out, yeah, we haven't made a new all-time high. We're still trading at some key levels here on the chart. The 1 year, we are still up 200+%. This sell-off, even though, yes, it was very significant, most of these altcoin charts are not broken. Like, they're not telling us that we should be extremely bearish at this moment. And even when we are looking at some of these other time frame structures, they're telling us that we should technically be pretty bullish at this moment. Even when it comes to Bitcoin, Bitcoin is extremely oversold on a lot of time frame structures. And I just feel like during this time, it's extremely important to focus on fundamentals. I know that a lot of people think that fundamentals don't matter at all. I just made a post regarding this on X just recently, and I said fundamentals around projects like all of these ones, including, of course, HBAR, and many others are pumping like crazy lately, but their prices are dumping. This is something so crucial to focus on, especially right now, because fundamentals will lead to value creation and demand. This will result in the prices of these projects skyrocketing yet again, while everyone is asking, why is X pumping? Because again, everyone was asking back here, let me go back to the 1 year, back here in 2024, why was HBAR pumping? Why was XRP pumping? Why were these projects pumping? And it's because we're starting to record months like this where we see so much growth, so much happening, even though it wasn't a very exciteful month for price action. All of this stuff leads to price action over time. And I know that everyone hates hearing that because they immediately think like once we see an announcement that the price should skyrocket, but I always look at fundamentals as just pressure. It's pressure, 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 building and building and building, just waiting for the price chart to break out. And yes, even though Bitcoin still is a main driver of this market, I still want to remind you all that, at some point in time in the future, utility will be the main driver of this space. Then we won't have to worry about Bitcoin. We won't have to worry about Ethereum. All we will have to worry about is the growth and the adoption of the ecosystem. And I don't think that we're going to have to worry too much when it comes to Hedera, considering the fact that we are seeing months like this around the Hedera ecosystem that are really going to drive future engagement, future growth, future, just demand for the network as well. And we're at a time right now in crypto where it's so extremely important to focus on projects that are legitimate, that are building out solid real world applications and can be utilized around real world applications as well. So, when it comes to Hedera, I would say that it's in a completely different league of its own. And it's a very, very bullish project, even on days where we see a major sell-off or we see the market performing in a way that we just don't like to see. And again, when we start to see sentiment flipping bearish in the market, I typically flip bullish. And I really do think that at this moment, a lot of these projects like HBAR are still extremely bullish projects to, be looking into even today when we see the market having a little bit of a dive. But with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely like, subscribe, turn notifications on because there's more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, Nick, thanks for watching. Peace out.